The time, I think it was about 16, I was playing with the school, but where I was spotted with a scout for Celtic, Joe Connor, his son played with a team from Paisley called St Murn's Boys Guild. And I was asked to come and train 2 nights a week under people like Alec Bodden, John Higgins, Frank Meekin. They used to take us for training on the Tuesday and Thursday nights. Used to change, there wasn't many people train, used to train in the old gym, you know, down the stairs. I think it's well gone now. And then just after I'd sort of signed the sort of, I think it was a provisional, I can't remember what kind of form you were tied with Celtic. There wasn't the S forms in those days, but you would come and train a few nights. And what happened, shortly after I was training, Jock Stein then came on board. And ironically, I think I was probably one of his first signings, not a big signing as such, but signed my sort of professional form. I actually signed a provisional form because they used to tie you up with a junior team in case you couldn't make it at the senior level. So I remember meeting him with my dad and with Adam Busby, the chap who was in charge of St Murn's Boys Guild. But another interesting story about my time just before I signed with Celtic and was training, and Sean Fallon would back this up. I was approached, strangely enough, with Tommy Docherty, who was then manager of Chelsea, and it's ironic I ended up going to Chelsea. But there was a Scotland, I think, underage match being played at Easter Road, and I went through to get Tommy Docherty with my dad and that. And he asked me a question, would you like to come? And I kind of more or less said, no, I'd rather sign with Celtic. Because he asked me with a choice, and he says, well, it ended the discussion. He says, if that's how you feel, son, because you remember Tommy played with Celtic. And ironically, but what happened, whether that triggers Celtic to move and make some action with signing me, they obviously found out about it through Sean. Sean kind of, I think he was through at the game that night. He'd saw Tommy Docherty in the tail, they'd bumped into us, and not long after I signed for Celtic. So in a strange way, maybe the fact that Chelsea were showing an interest, it kind of triggered the movement to something concrete to happen. But getting back, yeah, Mum and Dad were totally proud that, you know, you were signing for, well, I think becoming a football player, but especially with a club like Celtic. And from then onwards, initially I was part-time, then I became full-time, and then you make your breakthrough at the first team, you win your first medal, and you start becoming a regular, and eventually, you know, I moved from Celtic, you know, for mainly contractual reasons, you know. But I've got to say, I think the best time you have, and I've always said this to people who've sort of stopped playing in that, the most enjoyable time you have in football is when you're a player. Okay, there's enjoyment, different type of enjoyment when you're a manager, but when you actually sort of go out in that field and, you know, are able to play, there's no better feeling. I only played with one other club, Chelsea, in Scotland, I suppose, but I had maybe not so many good memories at Chelsea because of injury, some good memories at Scotland, but my best memories were always playing with Celtic. I think there was so many, you know, I was fortunate I was, you know, successful, both as a player and a manager. But I remember a strange thing when I was young. It was the first time I think I'd been to Celtic Park. I went to school in Paisley, St Murn's Academy, and they were doing a sort of can collection for the nuns up at Mordun Convent. I remember coming through, the reason we came through, they were playing St Mirren that night, and I always remember coming through the front door, and very seldom that happened, we'd kind of collect our cans, strangely enough in the gym where I started my, and looking back on it, there was a special air about that place, you know, not realising at the time, but looking back on it, and remember we did our can collections, I think it was at Celtic, ironically, then we came back in and gave our cans back in. So that was my sort of, I'd have been about 13 or 14 at the time, I'm not sure. But I remember coming in and there was a kind of aura about the place. And not knowing at that time I'd eventually signed for Celtic, you know, a few years later. But that was my first sort of memory of something different about Celtic. Got to be honest, when I was sort of younger, I used to go and watch St Mirren a lot because I was at Paisley and that. But when I was in my teens and that, I started swaying towards Celtic. And once I signed for them, obviously that was the case. But I always remember that night coming one evening, and I think a winter's night and that, doing my can collection for the nuns. So maybe it reaped rewards for me.